session, Advancing Good Food in Carceral Institutions Through Scratch Cooking. I'm welcoming Eliana Panilla, Warren DeWolf, Amy O'Rourke, Kelly McClellan, and Greg Christian. Um, I am going to pass off the microphone to Eliana of Chicago Food Policy Action Council to get us started.
Welcome everyone again, and thank you to our panelists and to you, our audience, who have taken time from your day to learn more about current good food purchasing program work taking place in Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, which we'll call it JTDC, you'll hear it often, and the Cook County Sheriff's Office, which we'll refer as CCSO. My name is Eliana Pinilla, and I will be your panel facilitator for the session. This is a special session personally. I joined this work through the Chicago Food Policy Action Council exactly 1 year ago, March 11 of 2025. And cannot tell you how much this conversation is the epitome of a full circle moment. My work with CFPAC is to specifically partner with Amy O'Rourke from CCDPH, Cook County Department of Public Health, who is leading this work at the county level and whom we are thankful to be part of this panel today. CFPAC and CCDPH have partnered in different ways throughout the years on this work, from the early days from when the resolution was passed in May 2018. And through the recent American Rescue Plan Act funding, the county was able to further power the implementation work taking place across food purchasing county institutions. Today, we will share a snapshot of that work through the lens of not only Amy from CCDPH, who will share more about the background and partnerships that shape this work, but also directly from the institutions JTDC and CCSO, and from Beyond Green Partners, who is a key collaborator and is currently working closely with these institutions to incorporate scratch cooking practices as an approach to advance good food purchasing program goals. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, their role, share a little bit about the food environment that you're part of and the places where GFPP takes stage. And so we'll start off with Amy, and then we'll pass it on to Warren, Kelly, and close it up with Greg.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you today. And thank you so much, Eliana, for pulling us all together to talk about the work in Cook County. Again, my name is Amy O'Rourke, and I serve as the Director of Chronic Disease Prevention and Control. And in this role, I oversee our efforts to strategically guide healthy eating, active living, and tobacco-free communities work. Since 2018, I've been leading the county's efforts in working in partnership with the county departments that procure and serve food to implement something called good food purchasing policy. So we'll talk more about that and appreciate you being here with us on this journey. So with that, I'll hand it over to Warren.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here and thanks for having me. I am the Food Service Director with Summit Food Service here at Cook County Jail, or CCSO. Been here about 4 years. It is an experience. It is vastly different than my hospitality background. It's great learning. We currently have around 6,000 individuals that we feed 3 meals a day to on our compound. So it's an experience.
Kelly, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. My name is Kelly McClellan. I'm Director of Food Services at Juvenile Detention Center in Cook County. I've been the director for a little under 2 years. I got into the program with Amy about a year and a half ago. As soon as I started working here, I started working with Amy. The experience has been totally different than I'm used to. My background is in hospitals. So coming over from hospitals to a detention center was totally different for me. But a lot of the expectations and the things that I wanted to bring to a facility like this lined up directly with GFPP. So it's been a great experience thus far.
Yeah, Greg Christian, Amy called and asked if we could join her team. She was putting together a team of lots of disparate parts to work in the county kitchens, the Stroger Hospital, the Juvenile Detention Center, and Cook County Jail. And her job, part of her job was to get these kitchens to eventually buy some local food. And she realized that the first step would be in understanding how the kitchens work. And she's not a kitchen person, so she needed help with that. And then what are the moves that can be made? What are the equipment? What's some of the equipment that they could need to, facilitate the possibility of buying more local food? And so we've mostly worked for the last 20 years in school kitchens. We've done some hospitals and older people homes, but I've really learned a ton from Kelly at the Juvenile Detention Center and Warren. There's a lot of reasons why, cooking fresh food is not on the forefront of their minds. There are so many other things that they have to manage. So it's been an interesting puzzle working with these two good men.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your introductions and being part of this important conversation today. So with that, we're gonna kick off our questions, and this is meant to be conversational. So I'll direct my first question to Amy, but of course, Warren, Kelly, Greg, feel free to chime in. Amy, there's folks here that are hearing about GFPP for the first time and the work that's happening in Cook County. Really interesting to have more background on that, and like, how do you see the passing of this resolution being adopted by the county? How is that supporting addressing the challenges that come up when powering the implementation portion of the work?
Thanks so much, Eliana. As you mentioned, Cook County became the third local government throughout the country to approve the resolution promoting good food purchasing. And I think it's really important before we jump into the work to acknowledge all of the efforts of national and local advocates that resulted in that systematic change, codifying those values in a county resolution. So again, many of you are in the room that made this happen. So I wanted to first recognize all of you for the work, and then kind of spotlight how we're continuing that work, moving beyond just policy towards that implementation. So Cook County leadership, we recognize that our public institutions can be a driving force for building healthier communities. And you heard that in some of the remarks from Dr. Kiran Joshi this morning during our opening for this year's conference. And with that, this work really centers on equity, accountability, and transparency. And so since 2018, as Eliana shared, Cook County Department of Public Health has been working and coordinating implementation of Cook County's GFPP in collaboration with the Chicago Food Policy Action Council. Together, we work with the county departments like Cook County Health, Stroger Hospital, the Juvenile Temporary Detention, and the Sheriff's Office to shift their food purchasing to align with the GFPP values. And since 2018, we've seen a number of successes, which we're really proud of. For instance, the county departments are purchasing more local food. CCSO, for instance, has significantly increased its spending in local food since 2023. I saw Jamie on from the Common Market. CCSO has been working with the Common Market to purchase local apples from Illinois and Michigan. And this would not have happened as a result, without something like GFPP really pushing us towards looking at what we're purchasing and where we're purchasing it from. And so, and another example is, fostering relationships. We've been working strategically with the county departments and have been invited to the table to look at and review their food-related solicitations and contracts to really make GFPP have more teeth around these GFPP expectations of incorporating them into the contracts, building the demand for more local food coming from GFPP-aligned sources, and uplifting the values of GFPP in all the food we purchase, serve, and sell at county sites. And as I mentioned, and as you can tell today, we work really closely and have fostered over the past, nearly 10 years, these strong relationships and partnerships throughout the county departments, but then also with community partners to make this work a reality. And what I'm really excited about to share today is we're really at an exciting tipping point in this work. As you've maybe heard, we've been leveraging $4.5 million in the American Rescue Plan Act funding the county secured to really accelerate this work. And through this new funding or this additional funding, we're taking a more holistic approach or view of this work and bringing additional resources to the county departments. Through our ARPA-funded project, we're uplifting the core belief of GFPP that access to healthy food is a right and not a privilege. And in 2025, as Greg shared, we began working with Beyond Green Partners and the Chicago Food Policy Action Council to conduct scratch cooking assessments. So to look at not just our food contracts and do those assessments and understand where we're purchasing from, but what's actually showing up on the menus. Understanding, if we have these goals to shift towards more local food, first let's assess what type of food are we serving. And so through these assessments, we've worked strategically with the departments to develop goals around transitioning the institution menus to serve more whole, fresh food. Through this work, we've at times paused and reflected on the importance of food in carceral settings. The recognizing and uplifting the expectations that food is restorative, and developing a shared belief that the kitchen and its staff are the heart of organizations. And so with that, we're, through this work, and you'll hear more about it from, Kelly and Warren and Greg, we're building the county's kitchen staff capabilities by providing hands-on training and purchasing the needed kitchen equipment to prepare and serve more whole, fresh food. We've also begun to align our GFPP work that's happening at CCSO and JTDC with broader justice reform efforts in the county, led by groups like the Cook County Justice Advisory Council. It's our hope that we're advancing food justice in carceral settings together. None of this work would be possible, so I want to acknowledge the work and the partnership with JTDC and Director McClellan, CCSO and Summit, and Warren's here with us today. And then also acknowledge, that they're the ones on the ground making these changes happen. We're working with them to identify creative ways to operationalize the GFPP goals. I also want to acknowledge my partners in this work, Beyond Green, Greg, Christian and his team, and SIFPAC and Eliana and her team. Again, none of this work would happen without, all of these key partners at the table, finding a way to really implement the hard work that needs to happen of, after a policy is approved, it's how does it work? How does it happen? And what's happening in Cook County is the results of everyone on the call today. So thank you.
Thank you for that thoughtful answer, Amy. And this reminds me about how the importance of the slowness of this work is not just for the sake of being slow, but for the sake of bringing everybody that needs to be part of the conversation to make this work long-lasting and sustainable. And so with that in mind, I want to give room for, we'll start with Kelly and then Warren. Love to hear your perspective now, fast forwarding from this space that Amy shared of like all the people that it took to bring this to the table, to develop an understanding, to develop a sense of direction and partnership and collaboration. Now we're in this like powering up phase of implementation, and that brings you to the center of this work and the success of this work in some ways, right? A key partner in that. Can you share what has this partnership to bring GFPP to life look like in action with your institution? So we'll start with Kelly and JTDC.
I think one of the biggest things that happened to us as we partnered with GFPP was bringing in Beyond Green was able to fuel this a lot faster than I anticipated. I come from hospitals. So I come from hospitals where I worked for different companies that ran the food service department for the hospitals. And by me being a county employee over here and having Greg come in, we had obstacles, but we also had attributes to us being a county employee. One of the things was that when Greg came over and we discussed the baselines of how we would do the assessments and of the food system. I was able to come straight to my office and make changes to my menu. I didn't have a higher power that prevented me from making those changes. Um, it worked in our favor because at the time we were only through the assessment, we found out we were only doing like 8% scratch out of my kitchen. Um, by the end of last year, we were up to 22, 24% scratch. So with us looking at that from bringing in Beyond Green, we were able to do a lot of things a lot faster. One of the other things that has been an obstacle for us is we have supplier and contracts that are already in place. So with those county contracts and suppliers that's already in place, that was one of the things that prevented us from moving a little bit faster. I have contracts with people already that are 2 to 5 year contracts that I cannot get out of, even with the idea of speaking with Amy about getting more local food. Have I been able to talk to those suppliers and distributors about where they decide to go get stuff? Yes, I have been. And they've told me like they're more than willing to do that stuff because as a county agency, they know that this is the new path. They know that we all have to move in this direction. So jumping on the bandwagon at this point is the best for us all. As it pertains to operational changes, I've been able to do the operational changes flawlessly. I have had issues with how do I get my cooks that have not been used to scratch cooking more scratch based mind with the mindset of scratch-based cooking. That's where Greg came in. Greg came over. Greg been coming in for like the last year, talking to my cooks, going over trainings. We just did a training today on fresh vegetables and rice cooking. A lot of my people are used to coming from restaurants, hospitals, um, elderly facilities. And guess what? In every facility, people cook differently. We have people that are used to rice cookers. We have people that's used to using the steamer. We have people that's used to using the ovens. And that's one of those things that we're trying to operation wise, we're trying to streamline so that everybody is cooking the exact same way. They read the recipe the exact same way. Nobody is taking advantage of like, well, I like to add this to, everybody staying streamlined. And I think that's one of the things that Greg and his team has brought to my kitchen. Um, as for us making additional changes, this has changed how I view a lot of things with the residents in JTDC. We've learned that feeding these kids high sodium processed foods that are high in sugars and all of this other stuff, it supercharges these kids to be on whatever kind of personality they are for the day. If they're in a bad mood, now they're supercharged in a bad mood. But what we have learned in the last year is with the increase in scratch cooking, we have less incidents now. The kids aren't running around pumped up on sugar and pumped up on the sodium in the processed food. We're cooking more um, bakery goods for breakfast. We're doing all of that kind of stuff. And we're also trying to make the additions to fresh food in the products that the kids want the most. We went from serving the raw Parmesan chicken wing. We're doing raw Parmesan chicken wings versus doing the frozen, already battered chicken wings. we're giving them things that they want. And for me to increase their knowledge of understanding scratch cooking, I've also started a chef program over here. It's called the Culinary Hospitality Education for the Future. And now I teach a culinary class over here to increase the knowledge of the kids to understand what we go through in the kitchen. And once they leave here, they're going to be certified in food handling by the state of Illinois, so they can also step out and get jobs, whether it's fast food or restaurants, or even if they get into catering. That was a mouthful.
I was still absorbing everything that you were saying, because I think when you're in this work all the time, you just kind of inevitably are just so zeroed in on like the thing that's happening at the moment. And it's been so wonderful to hear you like zoom out and provide this like, yes, we've accomplished a lot in partnership. And yeah, we're thankful for the energy that you're bringing there. I'm curious, Warren, like it definitely looked different, but still really powerful anecdotes on some of the work that you're doing in partnership and being enabled through GFPP. Would you want to share more about what does that look like at Sheriff's Office?
Sure, of course. This is a very challenging, like I listened to Kelly and the things he's able to do and the speed he's able to do them. I'm envious. This is, as I said when I introduced myself, I have 6,000 individuals in custody that I have to prepare 3 meals a day for, 2 of them being cold, but the hot meal, it gets very challenging at our scale when we're doing 1,400 pounds of vegetables for dinner tonight to process it by hand. As much as we would love to, in the current situation, the environment, it makes it very difficult. Working with Amy, Eliana, and Greg with Beyond Green, getting us equipment, analyzing what our menu, what we can rapidly change is great. It's been beneficial. You know, back when I started here a couple years ago, 3.5 years ago now, apples was our first, you know, what can we do to increase fresh food then and or local fresh food. And the apples was the most economical because again, we've all got budgets to adhere to and to work with and constraints. So that was the easiest and the quickest and has the best effect in that, you know, instead of individuals getting no fruit at all, or it was a canned processed fruit, you're now getting fresh apples. Unfortunately, you know, we can't do other fruits based on this, the environment here. We would love to. I know I would, and I'm sure the individuals here would love, but it also it produces security risks, so we can't do that. We're stuck with apples for now. We recently met and talked about what could we do more scratch than we're already doing. We've done the apples. Greg got us a RoboCoo through Beyond Green and some funding from DARPA for, you know, we got a RoboCoo. So we're now processing carrots. So we supplement our frozen products with fresh cabbage. We're processing cabbage for our coleslaw when it's served, or we have a casserole, what's on the menu this evening, actually. It's a turkey chow mein. And we process the cabbage for that, fresh, and into that. And now we're looking at what else can we do? Can we work on potatoes next to increase more fresh foods? It's been an experience. Like I said, the volume, the size of the operation makes it strenuous to evaluate what we can do. And it's great having outside individuals with that mentality. Here's what else you can do, giving you a different lens. You know, like Kelly, I've got an extensive background in running kitchens in hospitals, hotels, restaurants, senior living. I'm a chef background until I jumped into the suit mode. And it's hard to not be able to do sometimes the things we want to do. Like Kelly said, we know it's great, the benefits of a low sodium diet, of more vegetables, of less processed items, and that's what we're working on here.
Thank you for that perspective, Warren. And even in the higher constrained environment, I think that some folks here that work in the space and trying to advance better food in the space provide that like dignity in from like a food perspective. Could all agree that like there's places where it's not even like they're not even able to have this conversation or to have this partnership or to think as creatively as possible even within the constraints of budget. So we are again thankful, and we look forward to like seeing what our collective brain trust can continue to advance at CCSO. So with that, I'm going to bring it up to Greg for our next question in the context of from your perspective, like you've been doing, you mentioned earlier this for many, many years. You've seen schools, you've seen hospitals. This is your first time working in carceral institutions. I'm really curious to learn, how do you see scratch cooking partnerships build up stronger paths, resilience, sustainability to values-based procurement implementation work? Like, how is scratch cooking opening the door for that?
Yeah, thanks, Eliana. The first thing I want to say is that what Amy has done is, like, first she created this team that kind of covers all the bases. So she surrounds herself with this team of knowledgeable people. And then what I learned is that what Kelly does is he has surrounded himself with a team of not just his lead cooks that used to scratch cook 18 years ago and beyond, but also the bosses in the building, where like vision is shared. And so like Amy walks within this shared vision, and then Kelly at juvenile detention, vision is shared kind of at all corners. And I think that when people do question Kelly, he lets them know, like, here's what we're up to, and they get on board. And he did this like almost before he started. And Warren works in a building where we met with the number 2 person in the building initially, the first meeting, right? The number 2 person who's been there for a long time, and then other bosses, and they said, like, we're in. When really all the bosses in these 2 buildings didn't know the how. None of us knew the how, right? Warren did not have an answer of like, here's how we're going to do this. Here's the 5-year plan. Neither did Kelly, but all the bosses were in. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, like that the shared vision piece, it's not just fun to talk about, but it's almost critical, because the work is difficult in moving these systems. And I'll start with like Kelly's, what happens when first you like level people up, and in his kitchen, it's easy because people used to cook. And so it's just kind of like getting the cobwebs out from them. Enough of them. Some of them haven't cooked, but the core group have cooked. So it's like helping them remember, and then once they remember, and the other ones, we're training them up with like weekly classes on how to cook. Even though they work in a kitchen, they don't really know how to cook, these newer people. Then when the fresh food starts, I like to start with the fresh food first, and that's what we have to do with Kelly's, because he's got these contracts that are kind of airtight. But then the next contracts will center around local food, and the local food will come in, and his team will be completely ready. They'll be ready to cut food, to cook food. They're getting ready fast. And they'll also share in the vision, because they're helping come up with menu ideas. And so it's not this outsider, me or my team, saying, let's feed these kids who we know nothing about, sloppy joes like we used to eat in Oak Park. No, that's not how it works. Cooks, the customer, you've been here a long time. What do you want to make them? And so once we start with the local food, what happens is, and then the kids, Kelly's customers, eat more of it. then the farmers win, the local economy wins. And then once that market is built, then these kind of fringe farmers and the big farmers, like the big ag farmers in Illinois, can take 100 acres of their 10,000 acres and grow some potatoes for Juvenile Detention Center and Cook County Jail, right? And that market gets built. And then these smaller farmers can scale up because the market is built. Right now, the market's currently in Illinois is fancy chefs and farmers markets. And so there needs to be another market. Jamie at Common Market and others need another market. And then the kitchen, again, with Warren, the volume is so beautiful. I mean, Warren, he sees the volume as like it's 6,000 meals, three meals a day. That's a speed bump for most of us. But also imagine when this big boat starts to turn, and it already has, and he needs 1,400 pounds of vegetables a night, right? And currently he used to buy 1,400 pounds of shredded cabbage for the cabbage meal or the slaw side. And now he's at 300 pounds of fresh cabbage heading towards local and 1,100 pounds. And then pretty soon it'll be 50-50. We'll get him another Robocoup or a bigger Robocoup or whatever. And then over time, it'll be 75-25. And then pretty soon he's going to be buying pallets of cabbage grown close by and shredded. And then who wins on that? Well, in Kelly's kitchen, who wins is Kelly. He loves retention. He wants to keep staff. And you start cooking real food for people that you care about, and you're more turned on every day at work, and you're going to stay working there probably as long as you get your raises and get treated right. Kelly knows how to treat people. He's a strong leader. And in Warren's case, when we got there, and it's still like it's pretty, the budget's super skinnier than anybody can imagine. And also there wasn't a lot of fresh food. They buy some chicken chunks, they buy some stuff. And these are real smart cats. So they're not like buying processed food to like cut corners. Warren and the people he works with, these are bright people, open, curious people. So then once this fresh food starts coming in, I predict that his kitchen team could be even more turned on. It's like the difference between having a frozen pizza at night and Thanksgiving dinner for most of us. You're turned on at Thanksgiving, even if you don't eat turkey. I hope I answered that question.
Greg, it always is a welcome perspective, like how wide and like the topics that you touched on. It's like, valuing the workforce, helping grower communities develop true demand from the purchasing power these institutions have. Like that is definitely speaking to what we were asking you here today, and you did it so beautifully and masterfully through like the work that has been done in partnership with these two wonderful institutions. So considering we are almost 20 minutes away, I want to give some time to the audience to ask some questions who I know have asked some questions at this point. I want to ask a question for everyone. We can start with Amy and then go around. And so there's folks here that might be interacting at different points with advancing good food in carceral institutions, in their corrections facility, and like, as an advocate or as someone that is working directly in this institution. So I'm looking to hear from you, what kind of advice would you provide from your experiences today doing this work for folks that are looking to start this, to plant the seed, to create, the collaborations that have brought this work to life? What is your advice of folks that are trying to help this flourish from where they are? So Amy, take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Eliana. I think, as I'm reflecting on our work over the past, 8+ years in Cook County, I think it all comes back to relationships and fostering, strong relationships and that trust with county departments, community partners. So I think you heard that in everyone's response. Like, these relationships are key. And as a result of these relationships, we've been able to have really tough conversations, really dive into the challenges, that each of the departments are, kind of experiencing when we're trying to take on something as significant as changing the food we were purchasing, serving, and selling in the county institutions. And I think we're leaning on these relationships to really help us move the needle. That's something that Greg mentioned, Kelly bringing along his leadership, and at CCSO having the leadership, as well as the frontline workers that are, staff that are going to make it happen. So I think that's been really critical over the past, 5+ years, 8 years of doing this work, especially more recently when we've had these additional resources and investments that we can make within the county departments. It's developing those relationships and fostering them and continuing to show up and ask the tough questions and be honest with each other about what's possible, and then creating a place and space to be, kind of look creatively at the issues, and develop, that shared vision. I mentioned, the scratch cooking project in particular allowed us to, like I said, have some real conversations about the role food plays in carceral institutions, and the role that food can play in carceral institutions, and reimagine that. And so I think that kind of level setting and developing that shared understanding allowed us then to, again, like I said, think creatively. What equipment will they need to make these shifts happen? Where can we experiment with more fresh local food being offered? And so I think that's been really critical. It's the developing the relationships and then, developing that shared vision together.
Warren, Kelly, Greg, whoever wants to go first.
I would like to, I think Amy hit on a couple things. I think one of the main things was, I like to thank Greg for, speaking up about the leadership that I brought to JTDC to be able to do these kind of things. One of the things that made it easier for me to stand behind the decisions we were making and how we saw this thing moving is because I had an idea coming from hospitals, what I wanted to see. I saw that a lot of people were just almost like giving, microwave dinners out, and that's how they were just feeding people. It meets the requirements. That's all that we need to do is meet the requirement. We needed to do better, and that's what I had an idea of. When I talked to Amy, when I first met Amy, Amy understood that. Amy had an agenda. I had an agenda, and we just had to do a little bit of tweaking to get it to line up. By the time she brought Greg, I already believed in and trusted Amy to bring the right people to me to help us get to the same thing. Because it wasn't about my agenda. It wasn't about Amy's agenda. It was about how do we align both our agendas up with what Cook County wants us to do together. And I think it just came off fluid. By the time Eliana came in, Eliana got no kickback because I trusted Greg, I trusted Amy, I trusted Josephine, I trusted everybody else who had come through the door by that time. So it made it a lot easier. Part of my leadership was to convince not only the people that I report to what we were doing, because they don't have that, they didn't necessarily have the concept of what I was asking and what I was saying I wanted to do. And I was brand new. Amy came in having me explain GFPP to people who had never heard of scratch cooking concepts when they had only known me to be hired here for like 2 months. So it was a big ask. Then I had to turn around and ask the same trust level to employees that just met me. So it was a lot to do. I think a couple people asked questions about measuring the reduction in behavior and incidents. At this point, we have not, but I'm pretty sure if I go and I start asking those are metrics that they keep. If I ask to line those metrics up with when we started a higher scratch cooking percentage, I'm pretty sure I can get those numbers. I think one of the things somebody asked me was about the recidivism in individuals in my program. I'm assuming they're talking about my culinary program. My culinary program started out with 8 residents. I'm down to 4, but I'm down to 4 because the residents have been released. Have we had incidents where residents have still had some incidents? Yes. But to be honest with you, it's because other residents are jealous of the residents that's in my culinary program. They're walking away with stuff. We've done everything from creating marinades for chicken and meat. We've made rubs for meat that we've demonstrated and done taste testings with other residents. We just recently did sushi in my program. So we're trying to expand their palate to be able to go back upstairs to the other residents to let them know, hey, in the culinary class, we're learning this, and this is some of the stuff that Mr. Kelly is trying to bring to JTDC. Some of these kids are here long term. Some of these kids are here for less than 90 days. I am willing and able to see the kids that are here for less than 90 days and still try to do some changes in their eating habits and let them have the opportunity to taste things they've never had. One of the things Greg brought to us, we started a ravioli, a stuffed ravioli. They were used to having canned ravioli. When we did the fresh ravioli, the kids hated it. But they were like, we're not used to fresh sauce. We're not used to fresh ravioli. We're not used to that kind of thing. But as soon as I said, get used to fresh, let's get used to fresh. They're used to the sodium levels in the food to make it taste better. We just wanted to give them wholesome, the best tasting natural foods from scratch. And they couldn't wrap their mind around it. But I'm be honest with you. 11 months later, they're asking me, what's new on the menu? What's new on the menu? And that's what we work with. I've walked Greg around. Hey, this is the guy that's helping me bring new things to the menu. And they appreciate it.
Wow. Well, outside of this wonderful relationship piece that Amy brought in, and I think actually it was Doug in the chat that mentioned trust. That's specifically what you're building with not only the people that are in the administration, also the people that are in the kitchen and the residents. And building that trust is what makes this successful. We will forget that Chef Boyardee one up you for a second there, like Nuha said, but we'll see. We'll hear more we look forward to hear more stories down the line. Warren, would love to hear from you. What would you
I have nothing. Kelly took it all, so I'm just going to go home for the day.
Yeah, me too. Thanks,
all right,
Kelly.
Greg, I'll meet you. What I would say to anyone looking at beginning, this process, it is, you need to have an open mind. Especially as a chef, we're stubborn. We don't like to change sometimes. Our way is the only way. It takes others to come in and kind of slap you in the back of the head and open your eyes to say, there are other ways and there's more than one way to skin a cat. So you need to be open to change, to new ideas, to other perspectives. You also need to study yourself. Look at, for us, here at Cook County, our menu. Again, our volume is huge. When we make pasta sauce for the spaghetti and meatballs, I'm filling a 600-gallon kettle full of sauce. For me to make that from scratch at the moment with everything I have is very difficult. So, of course, we use pre-made marinara. I would love to, like I do at home, open up a can of crushed tomatoes or some fresh tomatoes and doctor it from there. We want to get there. We do a lot of stews and casseroles. How can we incorporate? That's for us and for almost anyone who's doing those in whatever the institution is. um, those are your easiest. You can buy fresh peas. You can buy, I'm not saying I'm buying fresh peas, Greg and Amy, don't get excited. But you can buy some fresh ingredients to incorporate into those so easily. It's thinking outside that box, like with the apples for us in the beginning. Small step, let's go. Bread, I can't make bread, and I go through so much bread, 12,000 loaves a week. There is no way I'm making bread to that scale in-house. But we can supplement dinner rolls, as the side item. And okay, can we make that? Can we make it for a specific diet or a specific whatever? For me, I'm fortunate we have individual IIC workers in our kitchen, and we feed lunch to them and them only. I mean, we feed other people the rest of the compound lunch, but they get a special meal prepared by us for helping us. That's also where we sample and taste test when we're looking at doing something new. We make a smaller scale. We get the recipe from our dietitians, and we go to town. And that's our outlook and the way we can figure out, is this going to be worth it? Is it going to be viable? Is everyone going to, are we going to reap the benefits of serving fresh food to the individuals here? And we want to. I mean, everyone deserves a good, fresh, hot meal. And it satisfies the soul.
Yeah.
Food makes you happy. You have a crummy meal, you're in a bad mood. You have a great meal, everything's okay.
Yeah. And I think, so I love two things that you said, like open minds. And I really am going to take this for myself, just like in daily life, small steps, let's go. That's like such a good, like, one-liner that if anybody's like struggling to figure out how to like, start this, like that is like a good way to do it and to think about it. So Greg, you get the tall order to bring us home.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's not my intention to bring us home. But I just wanted to add on to what Kelly and Warren said, and the question of how, where do you start or how do you get started? One of the things I've learned in working with Amy and a lot of the team that she's surrounded herself with, and other people that I've been doing this work around North America for over 20 years. And there's a lot of advocates, there's a lot of policy people, there's a lot of people with a pure intention of getting more local food like into people's mouths and into kitchens and into big kitchens. And so many of those people haven't spent almost any time in a kitchen. I remember when I met Laura from Roosevelt University, who's our anthropologist that Amy hired to follow this, which was such a smart thing to do. And Laura's like real smart. And she called me to interview me. And she said, and at the end of the hour, I said, have you ever been in a big kitchen? And she said, no, I never have. But I'm going to write a big, smart report about this subject, And I said, so I had her come to my kitchen, and then Amy's brought her to these other kitchens, and she's been in the kitchens. But I invite people to go to a big kitchen that you want to impact, and then remember that you're in their world, and then ask them questions like, Warren, Kelly, walk me around and tell me about your world. And then whatever they say, tell me more. Ask them why. I don't understand. And really get a feel for, it's like when you go to somebody's house, right? You go to somebody's house, you probably take off your shoes, and then you try not to sit down in the spot that is somebody else's spot at the dining room table. Where should I sit? Most of you would say, I don't want to sit in grandpa's spot, right? And these big kitchens are at first humongous and confusing, unless you're a kitchen person, and daunting. But once you get to know the leads and they let you into their heart and into their space and explain to you how it works, you're probably not going to end up being a chef. You're not going to be able to do what Kelly or Warren does, probably, but you'll get the current reality in your heart and in your head. And then from there, your questions will get better. And I mean, just from a year and a half ago when I met Amy's question and Eliana's a quick study, the questions that they ask now are like right on the money every time, right on the money. And the questions that I asked Kelly and Warren a year ago, hopefully my questions, if I ask any, are getting better because I know their world more. And it's just a piece that I want to stress because I've just been around so many people that want to make these changes and they have no idea what they're talking about because they haven't been in Kelly and Warren's house.
Yeah.
So
wow, such a powerful way to close us off, Greg. So I guess the invitation is open to all the folks that are here in today's session to, like Greg said, be curious, be relational, build trust, be open, and small steps, let's go. So with that, I'm going to leave it to our audience to send some questions through the chat. I don't know, Madison, if there's another, if that's like.
I would like to take Stephanie's question real quick.
Okay.
So Stephanie, Stephanie, in general, in my experience, it's cost neutral to move a kitchen from processed food to fresh food. Now, and that's going to be true, I assert, in Kelly's kitchen, because what happens is once you identify the waste, you can reduce the waste and afford more expensive food. So all the projects we've done for 20 years all over are cost neutral, or we save them money. Now, Warren's kitchen, he's got the skinniest budget like ever. And so that one, I could not promise cost neutrality at Cook County Jail. But everywhere else in these kitchens, and if you ever go visit a kitchen for the first time, don't go through the garbage can. Like when you visit somebody, you don't go through their garbage can the first time you go to their house. But what's in the garbage in general, and Kelly will admit this, there's a lot of food in the garbage.
Because they just went through my garbage, what was that, 2 weeks ago? I think that's one of the other things, Greg, that people don't understand when dealing with, like, me, Greg, and Amy have a rapport after a year where we can come together and talk about our successes. It's not like this every week. Like, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be things Greg wants to see the needle moving on, that because I'm a whole different entity and I'm working on other stuff, I'm like, not this week, Greg. Or Amy, I'm sorry we got behind, but we had call-offs. We got people out sick. We got people out hurt. Like, people think that when we say these numbers, it happened easily. It's not. The reason it happened is because all of us came together with the dedication. It's like what Greg said. Amy has been really good at putting the right people together. And I don't know if she's had any kickback from any other places, but when she comes in, she asks you, what are you looking to change first? And then she shows you how GFPP helps that. Then she gives you the speech. Then she pulls you along by giving you a little bit at a time. And then you realize there's stuff you have to give back to the program that she needs to take back. And that's what we've been able to work on. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, Amy has been good at making promises and making it successful. That's why I show up every day, and I've canceled vacations and I've canceled days off to come in and make sure that when Greg needs to be in the kitchen, I'm here in the kitchen. Amy's success, Greg's success, and my success are all intertwined. We have not been able to do it without each other. And that's what people have to understand. Like, when you have everybody in line, it's a lot easier. You find out how to get through the red tape, and you find out how to get past the non-believers if you have people behind you. Amy is always calling me like, I saw that you called. What's going on? Do you need to talk about something? And then we straighten it out and we get it done.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And there was another question that was coming through from Michaela. She's asking, what are the differences in bringing local food into carceral institutions versus schools? What are the similarities? And I can take part of this question, and for sure, Kelly, you can fill in, and Greg that has worked with schools. So I think the difference in this case, and I wouldn't say it's a difference, but like when you think about the requirements, there's nutritional requirements for each institution. In the case of schools, National School Lunch Program has very defined requirements. And that's something that Kelly has to abide to, specifically for breakfast and lunch, considering all the residents are school age. And so therefore, that is part of the requirements. Warren can probably expand what it looks like for carceral institutions, but they also have requirements that we'll have to say also they're not comprehensive, because it's different when you're thinking about school age. You have a more tighter age group. When you're talking about carceral institutions, people are at different stages of life and nutritional requirements. And at some point or another, it's not going to meet all of them. And there's an opportunity to do more of that work, especially through what we're doing here today. So I'll let others color in the spaces I left in between, but just to like draw out like the technical aspects first, and then for sure your experiences would be great to share.
And for me, coming to a carceral institution from school, from hospitals, hotels, restaurants, all of the likes, is the rules. You know, Kelly mentioned they're doing fresh chicken wings. I don't know, are you serving a bone-in or boneless? A bone-in wing is an absolute no here, you know. And I'm assuming it'd be the same, but I don't want to speak for your facility. I got back to the fruit. I would love to do more fresh fruit. We can't. Individuals make hooch, creates a problem. So you get apples only, and that's it. You can still make it with that, but we start giving out other stuff. So that is for someone stepping in to this or comparing it to other facilities or institutions outside of carceral. It is crazy the stuff we have to come up with, and you know what you have to do. And like for me, locking food up when we're serving, because it's a commodity, it's money, and I want to serve good food and give everyone what they deserve, but you know we have to lock it up and control it and make sure you don't steal 22 hot dogs and choke on them in my dish room, you know, which has happened, and it's sad, and I wish we could change that much more rapidly.
People are in the questions asking about the difference between me and Warren. You have to understand, Warren has 6,000 people. I only have 200 residents. So our budgets are totally different. Even though he has a small budget and his budget is probably extensively higher than mine, but for what he's doing, his budget is low. Over here, his budget would probably blow my mind. But we do have the same kind of incidents. Like he just said, he can't feed people that's incarcerated chicken on a bone. I can, because he is serving in a cafeteria style environment. I'm serving in small at the table family style tables. So we're able to watch our residents a lot tighter than Warren's facility would be able to watch their people. So
yeah, ours are served in either a day room or in their individual cell. So yeah, right. We give them something like a chicken bone.
Right. And it's like, and it's just like Warren said, we got residents over here under 18 trying to make hooch from apple juice and stuff too. So it's like, it's one of those things, you know, we have to regulate everything we push out. We have to keep tabs on everything. And like Warren said, like theft with food is currency in most of these places.
Eliana, real quick, another difference in between schools and these places is schools usually have 1 year contracts, and these places have like up to 5 year contracts that are really airtight because it's a government contract. And since it's a government contract, the procurement people in general are not in the same room, I mean, Warren works for a huge company. The procurement people are in another state, and he's never met them. They're in a windowless room in the basement, in Atlanta or I don't know where. And Kelly's procurement person works on the same floor as him in a different section, but they don't usually have a lot to talk about. Now Kelly's starting to go visit his vendors, and he's in regular meetings with procurement, but schools can move way quicker in this procurement arena than a government kitchen.
And I forgot, Eliana, you said something about the schools. One of the things is like Warren feeds 3 meals a day for everybody. We feed 3 meals a day, 7 days a week as
Yeah.
well, but we still have to follow school regulations, which is breakfast, lunch regulations with 2 snacks. So not only am I following the regulations for to be in a detention center, but I also have to follow the regulations that hold me up sometime, which is it's not hold me up because it's like it's a necessity for these kids because they have nutritional values and stuff that needs to be met. They're still underage. But
Yeah.
like Greg said, my contracts for some of these places are like 3 years with 2 years where they can do additions to them. So
Yeah.
I'm so if I'm in frozen vegetables for the next 3-4 years, I'm telling Amy, I'm trying Amy, I'm trying Amy, and then we just come up with what else could we do that would be scratch. And then I think one of the things that me and Greg came up with for my movement for 2026 is I'm going into a lot of more baked goods.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think it's a lot of like hurry up and wait and be prepared for when the opportunity comes of like what this work is about. And I think that that's true for like a lot of like policy work is that you're never going to have the perfect conditions of like your leadership or the budget of the environment. You just have to collectively organize and be prepared for when the time comes. And I've seen that happen masterfully at Cook County for more than one reason. Of course, Amy being one, but having the leadership of the current president for so long and steadfastness around like the good food purchasing policy has been supportive of that. And of course, the leaders that are on the ground, we couldn't do this without you all. We have maybe 7 minutes, so maybe I'll just like leave it for one last question. Allison Watson, she was asking about the reporting side of things. So I don't know if you're still here, Allison, or if you had to hop off. But please come off mute and share more about your question.
Hi, so I'm Allison. I'm the sustainability coordinator at Rush University Medical Center. And one thing that I think we've been working on, our food and nutrition service and clinical nutrition teams do pretty well in this space, but on the sustainability side of things, like reporting is really huge. And sometimes it's been pretty challenging working with vendors, especially like our bigger vendors in like honest reporting, especially in terms of like local food spend within the GFPP guidelines of 500 miles for meat and other animal products and then 250 miles for produce. It can be hard for them to really like nail that down. So I'm curious if anyone has experience with like working with vendors to define those reporting parameters or just kind of like aligning the initiatives that are already in place with the goals of GFPP and tracking progress over time.
Well, I'll give you the short answer, but I'll let Amy expand on it because she's been longer in this journey that I have been. But it's, a day at a time, a conversation at a time. It's been a lot of persistence. There's like I think we face the same issues of like completeness of information. Is that really the top challenge that we have? And I'm sure that you're experiencing a version of that too. And I don't think it's to the fault, like our reflection recently is like not to the fault of like the distributor, like the system has never asked that level of detail ever, or it's not been built to have that level of traceability unless there's like a catastrophic, food safety recall incident. So like, we just need to like start, this is part of like this, within this work of powering up the implementation, this is the building that consciousness around that within the vendors and support them and not, working alongside with them.
I would just add to Eliana's point, I think your challenge, Allison, the challenge that we all face reflects the lack of transparency in the food supply chain. Again, the systems aren't designed to share or provide that information outside of an emergency. And so I think, we were on a call earlier this week with Kelly because we're going to be kicking off our next GFPP reassessment for the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center and working with Warren and his team for a reassessment for CCSO as well. And I think, going back to the conversation about relationships and fostering a relationship, I think, Kelly's been doing a tour and a conversation with all of his vendors. So again, Kelly operates within a self-operated kitchen, and they have about 7 different vendors, food distributors, vendors that they purchase a variety of commodities from. So there are different contracts they hold, and it's fostering a relationship with those vendors and informing them about GFPP and to Kelly's point, what our larger goals are, and that we want them to be on the same page with us and move forward together, offer and procure more fresh local food, and talk to them about the type of data we need and work strategically together. I will say in this project, we're also working, and they haven't come up yet in our conversation, but have been part of this work for the past, decade, the Center for Good Food Purchasing. So we're working closely with the center's team, and they're also providing more hands-on support, John and B, in taking that burden off of Warren and Kevin at CCSO and Kelly and Mr. Murdoch at JTDC, and providing some hands-on support in outreach and engaging and supporting the vendors with providing the necessary data, the data that we're requesting. So working through their end, JTDC is making introductions for the center's team to contact their vendors directly and provide the technical assistance they need to be able to secure that data. So it's our goal over this next year to get more complete data, specifically the locality. And so, we're hoping with this more hands-on approach and fostering those relationships, it will yield more complete data. But this has been a work in progress because this is now our 3rd assessment at JTDC and CCSO. And so, every year every assessment, we're kind of getting a little bit more data, but we're on our way.
And Allison, I would just like to say, if you write it into your future contracts, like you write a bunch of stuff in your contracts when you go out to bid now, like you want, this size apple in this size box delivered this way at this temperature, right? And someone over there is really good at all the specs and all that you have to buy, really good at it. And then you consider adding one more thing, which is, where exactly is this from? And it's the hardest with meat. The meat's the least transparent. That's the beef, the chicken that you buy. The halal meat will be easier, but the meat people will resist this the most, and the milk, the liquid milk people will resist this the most. But you write it in and you go out to bid, and you want the deal because, oh, by the way, we're rushed. We pay on time, right? We pay every bill on time, and then you have to force them through the contracts. Is one way.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, all of you today. A lot of good work happening, more to be done. And I'm going to pass it on to Madison for the last piece of the webinar. Thank you so much to all our panelists today. Thank you so much for the audience to holding on and having such a rich conversation and wonderful questions and curiosity. And wishing you, a good last session. I'm not sure if it's going to beat this session. This was a really fantastic session. So I hope, it meets your expectations. Thank you again.